I want to talk about the key change that I'm making with my company and my business in 2024 and 2025, and why, if this is something you're not working on, irrespective of when you're watching this, you need to get onto the bandwagon and to ride the wave. And this has implications for whether you're an employee, an entrepreneur, or anyone who's looking to make a change in your life. I think it's incredibly important that you make, as I'm beginning to make, a refreshed commitment to building my personal brand. And let me explain what I mean by that, because I've been producing videos for the last 10 to 15 years, if I go back on it and think about when I started to first began to produce videos. But the thing that I'm doing now is quite different to what I've done for literally the previous 15 years. And I really wish I understood this sooner. And even with what I'm doing right now, it's still not quite where I want it to be. So let me just go through it first of all in a couple of steps, one by one. So first of all, one of the biggest things that I think is important is if you currently have a vacuum that exists online when it comes to your content about yourself and your brand, then you're already operating at a step back or a setback, with the primary point with that being that people make their own decisions about you in absence of you having content that relates to your personal brand online. And what that means is, if I'm trying to understand, well, who is Deepak Shukla? And there's nothing about you that exists online, or the only stuff that exists online is your social media content, which might be pictures of your friends, family, days out, then if that's the total sum of how you present yourself to the world, then you're going to be at a setback compared to everything else that we're used to seeing when it comes to your brand. So that's where being intentional about what's represented or presented about you online is super important. So doing a personal brand audit and understanding that if I have a choice between, for example, two companies or two individuals, and one of them has their LinkedIn profile and their resume, and the other person has a LinkedIn profile and a resume, and all of this other additional relevant content about what they do and their series of expertise, which one are you going to pick? It's a no-brainer. And then also, does a resume and does a LinkedIn profile truly capture the extent and depth and breadth of your expertise? Especially knowing that in today's world, people can lie, people can make stuff up. A certification doesn't mean anything. I can go onto Fiverr, I can go onto any platform right now and outsource the entirety of my qualifications for less than a couple of $100. The reality is that, as me, as someone based in Italy, but being of British upbringing, there are people that I can find in developing economies, in Nigeria, in India, in Pakistan, lots of areas around the world, who I can pay a couple of bucks, $100 to do a whole load of qualifications for me. Now, knowing that I know that, and knowing that I hire people that fundamentally are in those spaces, do you think that getting a HubSpot certification is a differential qualification? By that logic, it clearly isn't. And the people that fundamentally do rise into the positions of power today know these things. So that's why no longer is getting a qualification a differentiator when it comes to the presentation of your personal brand, because those kinds of certifications can be gained, can be manufactured, and you just got no way of knowing what's real and what's not. And the truth is that anyone can spin up a resume or anyone can spin up a certification. I could build something probably in Canva right now that's halfway decent and demonstrate that or show that to you. So that's why it's really important as we go up the levels and layers. Layer number one is that you might not have anything that exists about you online. So then you rely upon your resume and your LinkedIn. And if you don't even have that, holy shit, are you in trouble? Because when there's such an abundance of competition that exists out there online, then you're going to, in the end, if you want to ascend the levels of hierarchies of salary, of ultimately talent or value, you're going to struggle. So you've got your resume, you've got your LinkedIn profile, you've got your some essence of your online resume to include certificates, okay? That can all be gamed and manufactured, and it doesn't really demonstrate the application of that skill, because theory, of course, is different from practice. So that's why you need to separate the two. So when we talk about personal brand building, it's just practical for your own career and whatever career that you're in, right? If you're employee, you're entrepreneur, and if you're personal influencer, in all of those areas, because then you've got, of course, the company brand. Okay. So you've got company brand if you're, for example, running a consultancy. So that would be, practically speaking, I have the brand of Pearl Lemon. Okay. And then I have the brand of Deepak Shukla, the influencer. Okay, they're the two brands, and then beneath that, you've got all of the sub brands. So I've got the brands of my employees that I manage, and the way that I can recruit, retain, and improve the quality of the employees I have is that if my employees, to a degree, become small influencers in their own right, because then they attract a higher caliber of people. It's like, oh, and the people that are listening to this, Samson has a bit of a personal brand. Okay, great. So that is what Samson does whilst he's at Pearl Lemon, and that's what Pearl Lemon has helped Samson do. Therefore, I want to work at a company like Pearl Lemon. Oh, actually, if I'm on the client side, and who are the people that are managing my account? Oh, Samson. Oh, Zane. Okay, cool. So Samson's got this history on his channel of all of this PPC advice that he's giving. He must be an expert. So must Zane. So thinking about these layers and levels are really important when it comes to the importance of building personal brand. And this is stuff that I've done for reference because we're not even got to the areas or the levels at which I'm referring to. So if you're not producing this kind of content, this is going to be the separator and the differentiator because it's too easy to doctor everything else. And that's why if you're still chasing the certificate or the qualification, it doesn't really matter that much anymore. What people care about is the application of your knowledge and the corresponding result and the demonstration of that knowledge. And this is where the key part of it is, because what in a long form format, okay, in a long form format. So we'll kind of come to that. But bucket number one is just having a brand online, okay? And then being cognizant of if you're trying to go for a role as a paid media specialist, as an SEO expert, as a sales rep, is a picture of you drinking with your friends, is a picture with you and a parrot, is a picture of you on a family day out. Now, some of these things are useful to a degree. Okay, if it's you partying at the club, probably how does that align with the brand you're trying to communicate and the professionalism you're trying to portray? So it's powerful to have some elements of your personal brand life that does exist online, but at some point that becomes net negative. At some point that becomes detrimental. And what becomes more productive then is having stuff that relates to your industry, that relates to your niche as part of your personal brand. Okay. But then what people will often do, and this is what I did for reference, because I built up some stuff, and then I would produce a series of clickbait, ultimately shorts or clickbait content. So you might see me, or you might have seen me. I'm still trying to get rid of it. Frankly, silly little, for example, pictures of, and I say silly, but I mean it with love, like pictures of me and my cat, pictures of me outdoors looking out like that. Then there might be some kind of BS motivational quote. That's not unique. There's 1,000 accounts giving motivational quotes that exist everywhere on the internet. It doesn't add any value. You're not demonstrating anything because what people will do was they'll pull a quote from a motivational speaker and they'll just repost that. So what you want to think about is that what you're optimizing for the internet is quality of engagement. If you want quantity, you want clickbait, it's a different game, but it's ephemeral. So what I mean by ephemeral, it's not long lasting. If someone comes onto my account and they see some motivational quotes and then maybe they follow and they like, it doesn't really mean that they're attached to me as a person. It doesn't really mean that they care about the quality of what I say because they're probably subscribe to 10 other social media accounts that all have motivational content because they're at that point in their life. And then at one point they unsubscribe or each one is the same from the other. So there needs to be a demonstration of differential value. There needs to be a demonstration of your personality that you bring because people will come not only for production of quality content, but also for the personality and the stories behind the person who's giving ultimately you that advice. So that's why short form content, clickbait content is really, if you think about it, it's a type of content that people look at when they're on the toilet. So do you want your next potential member of your network to meet you while they're on the toilet? Imagine they're having a shit, and that's when they find out about your brand because that's what happens with shorts, which is why the market is now finally seeing shorts are great for some degree of brand awareness, but they're not good for retention. The person that you're likely to buy from, the person that you're likely to follow is the person whose content you're likely to consume all the way through. And the way that you want to optimize for that is to have content that's worthy of following all the way through. And that is the biggest change I'm making in 2024 and 2025. And if you want endless examples of this, it began with Hollywood, when you had movie stars, and then the movie stars became bigger than the movies that they were in. If anyone's ever heard of someone called The Rock or Dwayne The Rock Johnson, if anyone has heard of people such as Tom Cruise, imagine a Mission Impossible without Tom Cruise. If anyone has heard of John Wick, imagine a John Wick without Keanu Reeves. The people that are in the movies are bigger than the movies themselves. So how does that correlate with fundamentally the importance of building your personal brand? Because we'll go on and we'll continue with it. Individuals are bigger than the companies often or the movies that they're in. So what this means is that if you're not building your personal brand, then ultimately the quality of the engagement that you get is always going to be limited. Now, what's unique with, for example, movie stars is that they are stars in their own right, and the quality of their engagement comes from the movies that they're in. We don't obviously have that inbuilt advantage because we're not stars. So we have to propel ultimately exposure by having stories and communication that's worth talking about. And you know what the crazy thing is for me is that we've all got stories, okay? You know, I'm at the moment on this journey of trying to communicate the stories and the wisdom that I've learned over the years with my team. And I did them a and this is where it gets really interesting because we spoke about the ephemeral, the short-lived, the short-term nature of shorts in general. Okay, because you think about it logically, can you remember the last individual short that you watched? Probably not. Can you remember, are you more likely to remember the last video that you watched in one sequence that lasted longer than 10 minutes, 20 minutes? Probably yes. Has that ever changed over the history of time? Do you remember a poem or do you remember a book? Do you remember a 5-minute feature film or do you remember a movie? It's the long view. Now, what people try and do is that they produce this fucking Me Too content or recycled content, and that's the difference, right? Because we're not talking about let's use an AI tool and let's spin out and regurgitate the same thing that he said or that she said. That's not original. Which is why, again, can you actually remember the last SEO article or the last best sales tips article that you read that was on a website? Probably not. Which is why video as a medium is such an incredible separator because you get energy, you get tone, you get authenticity. So if you're not working on your communication skills in 2024, 2025, you're going to lose out because AI is on its way to replacing many jobs. Many jobs. Okay. And what's going to distinguish people is individual relationships, quality of communication, and the ability of the person who's using the tools to communicate it and to manage it amongst teams. So people often optimize for, to a degree, the wrong thing. You should have some level of technical skill, but if you think about yourself, you think about your kids' kids, I can't even imagine the kind of technology that I have access to because the rate of things that are progressing is incredible. So with that in mind, the people that I see that are winning now, the people that are opening up people's minds to it, the people that are talking about it, when I look at the people that are producing the best returns within my niche, that are blowing past people, is people that have made a consistent commitment to producing quality long form content. And actually producing long form content and having something new to say each time is hard because you've got to have lived it. Because people will very quickly find out, you know what, Deepak, I watched 2 or 3 of his videos and he's just saying the same stuff in every single video. So he's not bringing anything new or anything different. So first of all, the level of motivation should be high. It's something that I think I saw, and I'll re-say Alex Hormozy. I'm a big fan of yours. You'll never probably watch any of my videos, but I thank you because I mention you a lot. And if you're watching, of course, listen to the people that you aspire and that you admire and inspire to be. Listen to who they listen to, and then go back down the big loophole. So what's interesting about Alex Hormozy, and they call him the Mr. Beast of business content. So if you know who Mr. Beast is, then amazing. If you don't know who Mr. Beast is, then huge fucking influencer, probably worth hundreds of millions. And I think that, well, Mr. Beast, Alex Hormozy references him as being potentially the first YouTube up and coming billionaire. But then if you think about the list of people before that, so Alex Hormozy talks about this, and this is why it's really interesting. So the first thing to identify with Alex Hormozy is a business guru, but he also produces long form content every single day. If you go onto his YouTube channel at the time of recording, and things, of course, may change over time. But if I look at within my niche, the people that are making a ton more money than me, if I look at the people that are really optimized for success, they're producing continuous content on a daily basis. And in fact, even for example, Ryan Stewart talked about this. He said, if any business owner tells me, okay, I'm not getting the results that I want, I say, pull up any of your social media profiles. You're not posting every day. What are you doing? The key way to differentiate yourself over time is your commitment to producing consistent content, potentially, but also timeless content. So what people do, and what I was doing for a little while, was producing ephemeral, short-lived kind of bullshit content that wasn't really adding value to the marketplace. Like, what are you saying that's truly engaging? What are you demonstrating in your discipline that's different from everyone else? And to a degree, of course, the process is hard because you've got to have something original to say. So you've got to go and have a level of education and bring a level of insight, and then you bring your stories and your personality to it. Like for me, the biggest learning of this whole thing is that I've been producing content that's been absent stories, content that's been absent the context of my journey, and I've had long periods of inconsistency. So I've just got this huge commitment to building my personal brand. And again, I look at the people, and Mr. Beast is a good example of it. The fastest growing companies that seem to be popping up from everywhere, the fastest growing companies are influencers, individuals. The youngest ever billionaire, I think, might have been Kim Kardashian, and there's others. They're all influencers. If you look at, I think, George Clooney, he released a gin and tonic brand, I think. The Rock, Conor McGregor released a whiskey brand that outdid Jack Daniels in sales within a couple of years of him releasing it. Conor McGregor was bigger than the UFC. So people are building their personal brands, and all of these people that are building consistent personal brands are doing something excellent in their field. So of course it's difficult, but there are people also that are building their personal brand from scratch without doing anything else before it. And if you think about it, Tony Robbins, a great example of someone who's built an entire personal brand by inspiring others to be the greatest and best versions of themselves. So when it comes to why, to the team who I'm listening, I'm so committed to the building of my personal brand. This is why. Because when I think about Pearl Lemon and I think about what could be the biggest lever, I mean, there's so many levels if you're watching this at which building a brand helps, even if the attachment of the building the great company is secondary. Because let me give you like a whole bunch of other areas for which producing long form content is so powerful. Number one, if you produce long form content, it forces you to put the hours in to understand enough about your niche, because you have to have something different to say. You can't produce one 20-minute video and then you say, I'm kind of done. You say, okay, fine. So you're not probably, maybe you're not ready yet. And then there's different arguments about document rather than create, and you can share the journey. Absolutely. But it comes with consistency. So, but number one, it forces you to ultimately learn new stuff. Number two, it forces you to learn the stuff that you know even better, because when you teach, you learn. When you communicate those things which you believe that you know, you understand the gaps in your knowledge, but it also ultimately teaches. Number three, you become a magnet because you begin to attract your tribe, attract the people that have the same values as you, attract people that have the same mindset as you. So you already differentiate yourself and level up in terms of your network strength, because you become that guy who's producing the long form content, who's maybe kind of obsessive, who keeps talking about similar areas. You attract birds of a feather flock together. Okay. The next point is that for me and my team, it creates a scalable infrastructure to communicate my knowledge. So now I have a way that people can, via a portal, access all of the thinking in my brain. And I've never given my team that benefit before. I've always been a bit further back, or maybe I'm talking to you about tactics, or maybe I'm not talking to you at all when you're managing or working with other people in the team. But if I begin to communicate and produce long form content, it is a form of training. It's a form of training. The next point is it helps you build culture at your company, because people begin to understand your mindset and your thinking, and it increases the caliber of the people that wish to join your company. The next point is that your clients see it, and your clients can buy into you. Because I say, you know what, Deepak knows his stuff. Deepak is genuine. Deepak has got this long history of recording actually great content. I want to work with a company like this company that I see, because a company is comprised of individuals. So I want to see that. So there's all of these points that relate to areas that aren't connected to the building of your personal brand or aren't directly connected to the growth outcome that still benefit your company. So even if all else fails, there's still value in building it out, because how else could you communicate the all of that which you've learned? And also just from a if you want to scope it out, the deferred benefit that you get from putting the work in now to build your, and you become ultimately a better implementer, a better teacher, a better trainer, a better motivator. You become a person of inspiration by producing content. The deferred benefit that you get from that is so big that it's difficult to describe. And of course, it's difficult because it means that you need to have a commitment to producing regular content on a regular basis and be prepared to wait for a reward that might take months to weeks to months to years to decades. And this is coming from someone who spent, I'm 37 now. I started producing my first pieces of content at probably 21, 22. I've been doing this for 15 years and I don't have a brand. I'm still trying to figure my brand out, but this is what I say when you need to be committed, because it isn't always, there's no direct correlation with effort versus outcome. There's always an outcome, but if the outcome's the right outcome, it can take a lifetime to do that. So that's where the separator comes in. And that's why producing content is hard. But then if you think about it, as you go up, if we think in terms of differentiation, how much harder and how much therefore meaningful is it to produce a piece of content that, for example, is 2 hours long, that's freely accessible? You already separate yourself. That's a book in verbal format. You're creating significant enough value over the course of, for example, 120 minutes. And at this time of recording, you'll not see a single video that's 20 minutes, that's over an hour on my channel. But I want to get to a stage where I can produce 2 hours plus of consistent content. And if you can keep people engaged for that length of time, you're much more likely to build a lifelong follower who will buy into what Deepak says about Deepak's principles and Deepak's way of life and Pearl Lemon's values and Pearl Lemon's mindset than anything else. Because so few people are prepared to do that. If you think about the amount of agencies that exist, if I think about our business as an SEO agency, and then I think about not only the SEO agencies that exist that have the reviews, that have the case studies, how many agencies have founders who've produced 2 hours plus piece of content on any single video? I don't know anyone. Probably they exist. I've not researched hard enough, but they're few and far between. And that's a great differentiator and separator. And think about it. To have acquired enough knowledge within your space to produce a piece of content that's several hours long isn't an easy feat. Most people are afraid of it, but if you are able to produce that, it already separates you as being someone who understands SEO at a wholly different level from the others before you. And all of you who do have that level of knowledge, because often you do, it's a ultimately discipline problem. And I say this to you as much as I say it to myself, that prevents you from putting in the necessary time to build it. So be committed to your personal brand. Invest in producing long form content. Understand the ongoing massive benefit it will have for your life. It is not the case, by the way, that the last 15 years have fundamentally hindered me, because my sales team every day say, Deepak, people came because they saw the personal brand that you have built. Deepak, people came because they've looked at the content that does exist about you. Deepak, people came because they respect and admire your journey. So it's not to say that none of the work is wasted, because there's a lot of work that has gone in that has stood the test of time. You know, as a consequence of me being committed to the personal brand today, I've recorded 3 TEDx talks. I've done one at Cambridge University. That's always going to live with me, because I'll always be able to separate myself and say, I'm that guy. Why should I follow you, Deepak? Because I'm the only guy that you'll probably find has done 3 TEDx talks at Aston University, at Cambridge University, and another London-based business school. Find me someone else in your space. Trust mark, ticked. I've got no question of trust, because it's just there and it's out there. And yes, that's such a simple way to differentiate myself. So there's all of these unexpected outcomes that can come as a consequence of the input. And what happened there? I then started to get invited to other business schools, and there's other content that was produced. So if you're struggling with the idea or fundamentals, you can of course appear on other people's channels. And that's what I did, which you should still do, but that's not the only thing you should optimize for. So grow your own brand by building in your own house, but also enter other people's houses with permission and preach at their fireplace. which are the other YouTube channels, the other podcasts, the other blogs, the continued commitment to the demonstration of your expertise in the wild and in practice will always benefit whatever it is that you're trying to build. And that's something that I didn't do enough. And I want to do now because I also feel that I've got a moral obligation to communicate this message to you to help you become more successful within your business, within your career. Because again, I try and tell everyone, I'm saying, imagine if you just if you think about the lower rungs on the ladder, right? Because for many of you, it's a case of going 0 to 1. So 0 to 1, one might be depending upon your relative terms, but zero is nothing, an old, outdated Facebook profile, a LinkedIn profile with no image, and maybe that's it. Okay, that's 0. 1 is updating your LinkedIn profile as best as you can, looking at your social media accounts, and just putting up some cool pictures so that if someone cares about Facebook because they live on Facebook, maybe that's where they find you. If someone cares about Instagram, they find 10, 20 pictures of you and they build for trust, saying, you know what, Zane, Samson. So for those of you in the audience, I've got a couple of people. Zane and Samson are here. They see that okay, Zane is a real person. I can trust Zane. He is not someone who's going to just be here today and he's gone tomorrow. I see he's a family man. I see that he enjoys time with his friends and family, and there's things that I can relate to. But if Zane's trying to then position himself as an SEO expert, maybe I look for the certifications. Maybe I look for evidence of his qualifications. Of course, if I'm skeptical, and you should always assume people are skeptical because then you can work towards removing all doubt. Make content for the most skeptical people out there so that all element of doubt can be removed. And that's what I find that a lot of people struggle with, because thinking about the Zane example, Zane's put some HubSpot qualifications up. Zane's put a SEMrush, an Ahrefs qualification up. He's maybe done some paid media. He shows me some case studies. I'm a skeptic. You made up your case studies. The case studies weren't you. It was someone else within your company. You're just claiming the work. It's difficult to prove, isn't it? It's difficult to prove. If you really think about it, it's difficult. Oh, so you were at this company and you did this work. Prove it. Show me the dashboard. Is it even your dashboard? Did you work on that? Or are you just taking someone else's work? How do I know? Well, you have to trust in the end. How can Zane prove? Well, look, I appreciate you don't trust me. Here's a case study where I've got the live dashboard and it's in a video-based format, so it's not doctored or manufactured. You can see me logging in, accessing it, and I talk through the results. If you don't trust that, because it still could be someone else's results I'm talking about, here's a 2-hour presentation that I've given talking you through the mechanics of an advanced media strategy for search engine optimization. Boom. That is quite difficult to falsify. That's quite difficult to not believe. So, so most people never ever get there. I didn't get there, which is crazy, right? Because you can build whole companies around it, but this is how you differentiate yourself. This is why, for me, building a personal brand is so important. And I'm building a brand in relation to the kind of content that I want to produce. And the thing that I want to communicate outside of SEO expertise or lead generation expertise is that I have changed my life through transforming my mind. And then I built the other skills around that. So any other skills that I've derived from that came from learning about the particulars of search engine optimization or cold calling or LinkedIn lead generation or web development, they came after I began to transform my mindset. So that's the stuff that I think is always most important. And that's the stuff that I tend to focus upon. And I want to give people, I feel I have a moral obligation to share those things that I've learned through the mistakes that I've made with the world. That's also why I've got a dedication to building my personal brand, because it's my greatest way to influence the lives of others. And it's also why, Samson, who's listening, I've got such a commitment. Mandela, if you're listening, I've got such a commitment to building my personal brand. It's why I want, when we schedule our videos, I want the ad sets that you are going to run to be better than ever. I want us to optimize for getting as much exposure as possible. So I want to cast the widest net with the most relevant people to optimize for the few that will fully engage with what it is that I'm trying to communicate. And if you're watching and you've stumbled upon this video at some point, I encourage you to get on that journey of building your personal brand. I encourage you to build it into the ultimately process of everything that you do, because the payoff over time will be massive. And I have seen influencers in my space that are now making millions, tens of millions, in some cases hundreds of millions. I've seen some of them come up after me and start to build their brand and far outpace me when it comes to the level of income, the success they're having in their lives. And the biggest commitment that they made was to share their in-depth knowledge on a continuous daily basis. And then, as a consequence of that work, their success is transformed.